Please welcome to the stage Michael Arougheti, co-founder and CEO of the Ares Management Corporation, and Tom Garfinkel, Vice Chairman and President and CEO of the Miami Dolphins and the Hard Rock Stadium, and Managing Partner at the Formula One Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly.
All right. Light applause. Light applause. Listen, that's more than I got earlier, so you guys should feel really good. So happy you're here. We have so much to talk about in the world of sports, and as I was thinking about this conversation, I realized both of you cut across so many of the big global sports. Tom is featured in an upcoming series under the Power Players brand, all about the business of Formula One. We got to spend a lot of time together down in Miami. We're going to talk a little bit about F1. That's been something you've invested in over the years, Mike, through Ares. But it is the first day of the NFL season. So let's talk some football. You guys made some big headlines last year, Ares as an investor into the Miami Dolphins under these new rules that the NFL adopted to bring institutional capital in. My main question for you as the recipient of such an investment, Tom, is how's it going? How does it, how does private equity sort of change? And
how's it going, Tom?
Worst decision, Steve Ross.
Like Ed Koch, how am I doing?
No, it's fantastic. I mean, we couldn't have better partners. I think, obviously the NFL was so diligent in the process of how private equity came into the sport and who was selected to come in and their reasons for coming in. And we couldn't have a better partner in Ares. I'm not just saying that because Mike's sitting here, but the whole team from Ares has been strategic partners, long-term. They've got a long-term view on things, and they're a lot of fun to be with. So it's kind of the best of all worlds.
So why do it? Why go in? What's so great about the NFL?
Well, I
said somewhat sarcastically, but go ahead.
Football is obviously the most watched sport. Huge scarcity value, ever increasing media rights value. The business model of the NFL is probably one of the most durable in all of sports. And so as we think about just investing across the entire sports ecosystem, the NFL kind of checks every box, right? I mean, most other leagues that we've invested in, there's some risk that you have to box, relegation or lack of national media rights, but the NFL really sits at the top of the top. There was a long process, as Tom hinted at, just to get authorized to invest in the league. We are incredibly proud and humbled by the fact that we were selected in a very small handful of people to do it. And I think a lot of that is just the experience that we brought to the table, but also the respect for just how important it is to be a good long-term oriented partner.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins were our first. I don't know if it'll be our only, but in NFL, the Dolphins are particularly unique as well, given the multitude of assets, stadium, F1, tennis, all the things that surround it. So we thought that it was a really good place to start.
And I want to talk more about that in a second, but one thing that does strike me, Tom, and the three of us have talked about this individually over the past few months, is this idea that, you guys did your deal, the Bills did their deal with Arctos. There have been a couple other minority stake sales, including one reported by Bloomberg yesterday, with the Koch family coming into the New York Giants. Tom, are you surprised there hasn't been more?
No, I think the NFL, ownership of these teams are being very deliberate, very patient in their selection, and given the valuation of the deal that you announced yesterday, Mike's already got a great deal with us. I think some of the owners
reportedly a $10 billion valuation.
I love that. I think the fact that some of the owners are waiting, I think they're expecting values to continue to rise, and I think they're right.
What do you think about valuations? I mean, having done the underwriting here and done all this diligence, where are valuations right now? Where are they going?
Look, when the first investment came into the league at a $5.5 billion valuation, I think people were shocked. The median value in the NFL now is about $7.1 billion. And with every successive investment, you're seeing those values go up. Some of that is the presence of institutional equity. So if you just look at sports team valuations in general, you'll see an inflection. NBA saw it, NHL saw it when institutional capital comes in, because you're dealing with asset scarcity. And when you start to open up new channels for investment, valuations will naturally go up. So I think you're beginning to see that scarcity value thesis play out. And then the media rights, continue to go up. And so sports franchises have compounded at 10 to 15% per year for the last 15 years. And then they get these periodic inflections whenever you up tier the media rights. But I think they'll continue to go up.
And Tom, do you agree? Like, how fast will they go up? I mean, how soon are we going to see a $20 billion team? I mean, I know it's hard to project, but
I think that's going to happen sooner than people expect. Look, I think I look at it maybe more simplistically. I just think that it's fundamentally supply and demand. You've got a lot of demand for these assets. They don't go for sale. There's a scarcity supply of them. The NFL is a fantastic business model. It's also a group of owners that's sort of a club some people want to be in. But from an investment standpoint, Miami, for example, in some of these markets, you get a chance to, host. I mean, we'll have the World Cup, we'll have the national championship game, the Formula One race, the Miami Open tennis tournament, all in the next, in the first 6 months of 2026.
On your campus.
On our campus, and so when you get an opportunity to host, we had, the level of celebrity and power and the people that come to these events, there's meaningful business that's conducted in those environments. There's a lot of different value levers, and I think fundamentally, again, supply and demand, as people who can afford to purchase these teams get more wealthy, the valuation's going to go up, the scarcity's there, and I think for institutional investors, that's part of, I'm not speaking for Mike or Ares, but I think part of the calculus has to be the health of the business model. I mean, the NFL is the most relevant cultural phenomenon in the United States, as evidenced by viewership and everything else. And that's going to continue. So the valuation should continue to go up.
And Mike, you alluded to this, and Tom has too, this notion that you guys are now a global sports investor. I think it's fair to say. Mm-hmm. But that's, I mean, you were doing some of it, but now you're doing it, I would argue, at scale as much as anyone. When did you make that decision and why? So
it's interesting. We, at Ares, we pivoted to that at the beginning of COVID. And the catalyst was, for a lot of leagues, they were looking at an ownership group that was asset rich, cash poor in many respects. They were going to be facing acute liquidity challenges. And you had live events with no spectators. Right. So it became pretty obvious to us that if we could actually go in as a creative liquidity provider, that we would be able to do something special. So it actually started off as an idea that we would effectively build a bridge through the pandemic to leagues and team owners. By moving early, we were able to develop some pretty trusting relationships, I think, at the league level, within the ownership groups and within the broader ecosystem, that we were there not to take advantage, but to really help people through it. And then, as everybody knows, through the pandemic, I think we really learned how much we just love sports and how much we miss them. And so on the back end of the pandemic, the valuations accelerated, and we find ourselves where we are today. But that head start that we got by building that trust as a solution provider, I think, went a long way to putting us where we are now.
And Jason, think, back to the relevance of the NFL. The Hall of Fame game, which is the first preseason game that was played this year, and this is consistent for the past few years, pulled higher television ratings. Now keep in mind, there's nothing but third, fourth string players that probably aren't going to make the team playing in that game. That game pulled higher television ratings than the average NBA playoff game. So you're talking about a preseason game with no starters playing.
Alex Rodriguez is backstage going, oh, good.
No, and the NBA is great properties. They're great businesses. I'm not saying anything negative about the NBA. The NBA is a great property, and Alex made a great investment, and I would be bullish about his investment. But I think when you just comparatively speaking, you talk about the relevance of the NFL and the power of the NFL culture in this country, I think that speaks volumes.
Average viewership is 5 times the next nearest league in the NFL, 17 to 18 million per game. So nothing even comes close. And I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, 29 of the 30 most watched televised events of all time were Super Bowls. I think bested only maybe by the moon landing.
And year to year, it's anywhere between 92 to 96 of the top 100 most watched television programs are NFL games.
Right. Well, and then we spent a lot of time on college sports earlier, a very good amount of time, an appropriate amount of time talking about college sports earlier this morning, and clearly the money that's going in, the viewership that's there. I mean, you essentially have NFL Junior being created at the college level. Is that investable, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this. We try to approach the whole sports investment business as understanding the sports ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So that's what's so unique about what Tom and his team have is the stadium asset has now created an ecosystem around the stadium asset that they get to build other things into. And as Tom alluded to, you then have the ecosystem of Miami, which is actually one of the fastest growing, most favorable demographics in the country. And when you have that level of impact, you start to see other things come out. So I think when you start to see development of NIL and rejiggering of college leagues, all of that starts to become investable with innovative financial product. And so, we're always looking for those markets as they open up, but absolutely college sports, stadium assets, NIL support, media rights, et cetera, those are all going to become big investments.
I mean, you're going to have the college football national championship, right?
We are. I mean, every year we have Orange Bowl, we have semi, or this year we have the national championship. Last weekend we had Notre Dame, Miami.
Right.
The governor of Florida, the Secretary of State of the United States, and a nameless, one of the top 5 wealthiest people in the world were all in the suite at the same time. And the electricity in Hard Rock Stadium for that event, it felt like a national championship game. So, the relevance of Miami as a market, the relevance of sort of the investment that Steve's put into the stadium, the private investment, the fact that, we own the stadium and grounds, we're able to do these things. But these events, whether it's college football, international soccer, Miami Open tennis, Formula One, we had several, starting last October, we had Taylor Swift. We've had this summer Morgan Wallen, The Weeknd, Coldplay. The concert series this summer has been huge. So, it's just, it just continues from there. The number of events, I think we had 48 major events this year with 2 million people coming through the gates, which both of those are about twice what they were 5 years ago.
I mean, I remember being there for the F1 race this year, and I remember people literally being like, all right, we got to take this down, get ready for Shakira, right? Was that right? So, I mean, how many times have we all said that? So let's talk about F1 for a second. I mean, that has become, it was a big bet by you and Stephen Ross. Yeah. Again, deep tease, upcoming series, The Business of Formula One, Power Players, starring Tom Garfinkel. What has that business been? You've been in it as well, and where does it go from here, Tom? In turn, we have a new Cadillac team coming onto the grid. They'll be racing in Miami next year. How big could F1 get in your estimation?
I'm very bullish about the future of F1. I think Stefano Domenicali, who's the CEO, is a great leader. He's done great things. Liberty Media obviously has invested into the sport and done great things. In our case, it took about 4.5 years to get that deal done. Once we got it done, we had 11 months to pull off the first race, build a racetrack, build all these hospitality things. We try to do things differently sometimes, and we try to do things very from a customer centricity standpoint. What would I want if I was a customer? A lot of these races, not unlike stadiums, have sort of 3 homogeneous seating products. So you sit in the paddock club or a grassy knoll or in a grandstand. We created over 30 across different spectrums.
Although that first year, the beach was not quite that beachy, you have to admit.
Yeah, the beach. So we improved the beach, we improved the boats, we improved the paddock.
It was not
it was like a painted.
Well, the first year the problem was the paddock club was temporary. The food wasn't good and the experience wasn't great. We between year 1 and 2, it built a 180,000 square foot paddock building in about 7 months, and it's basically like a 90-story building laid on its side, and improved that whole experience. So by year 2, I think we got it right. But huge investment, huge amount of time, big bet, huge challenges to pull it off. But now it's a fantastic event. We were humbled to win the Promoter of the Year last year from Formula One. And it's essentially, we've created $1 billion business out of the parking lots, which is, $1
billion business.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Wow.
By itself. I mean, we got a, 5-year, we got an extension, so we're now signed through 2041. So when you look at, EBITDA, future cash flows, take a multiple, it's $1 billion.
Like the scarcity value, right? 24 races, 3 in the U.S.
Yeah.
So you own that asset. You're one of 3. Take the strip out of it because that's multi-purpose. But most racetracks are single use, single weekend, and you pay all this money. It sits there, and you open it up once a year. What they've created in terms of the whole programming there is really epic. I mean, it's quite different.
And so, sort of circling back to where we started, how do you, as partners, how do you take advantage? I mean, how do you sort of opportunistically take advantage of the fact that this guy doesn't just run a football team, he runs a Formula One race and a major tennis tournament and concert series, et cetera. How does that play through to your investment thesis?
Aside from the fact that we love spending time together, I think part of what's happening in sports, which is why the Aries and the personal and everything's coming together, is, I don't want to sound derogatory, but sports ownership up until maybe 10 years ago was pretty sleepy. You had family owners that were not waking up every morning and saying, how do I innovate? How do I maximize the value of this asset? How do I improve the customer experience? And so, the new generation of owners, both personal and professional, are bringing a level of sophistication and rigor and willingness to take risks that I think is just changing the nature of the business. Tom, in my opinion, is probably the most innovative executive in sports, just the way that he thinks about the client experience and
you guys are buddies. This
no,
is
it's
great.
true. It's true, and
We're not even drinking wine yet.
but you have to, like in any business, you have to wake up and say, how do I make, what does best in class look like? How do I make my business better? And so, we're constantly trying to leverage each other's experiences in sports and out of sports to innovate, and I think that's part of what's making the partnership.
So theoretically, you guys could go buy some. I mean, like you could partner to buy something in addition to what you already have together. Tom?
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, growth is paramount to what we do, and Steve Ross. The reason I came to work here in the first place is because he's a big thinking, entrepreneurial, out of the box thinking kind of person, and I like to think that way, and so to be able to over time like build the business and create these assets, and we had the Paddock Club, we had the racetrack. I had this idea to create this thing called Precision Drive Club, which is a race car country club of sorts for people who are motorsports enthusiasts who have their own cars and supercars, and so we went and invested in it and built this business out of it. And
That's the most Miami thing I've ever heard.
it's a very Miami thing. Yeah,
They're all like yellow DeLoreans, and Lamborghinis, and things
yeah.
like that.
So it's and I tell him, he says, yeah, baby, go do it, and then we go and do it. And look, it's not without risk. It could fail. It's in its first year. It's going well so far, and I think it's going to be a home run. But it's having someone like that who has both the capacity and the willingness to invest in big ideas, and to bring a level of, as Mike said, sophistication, business sophistication to it. I do think a lot of sports teams are sort of family-owned businesses. When you win, you sell tickets. When you don't, you don't. There's a mentality, a mindset of they kind of do the same thing every year. And, we try to, it's all about people and bringing in great talented people, putting processes in place, and then the results come. But we've got a team of people that are very innovative. They're very team focused, and we're disciplined about our business practices, but we're not afraid to take risk and try to invest in things and create new things.
So Mike, in addition to the partnership you have here, you are also a partner with another guy who was sitting in this seat earlier, David Rubenstein, in the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, talk a little bit about that. That's a personal investment.
Yep.
How did that come about? What was your vision for sort of making that investment? I know you're a huge baseball guy. I've known you for a long time. You love baseball. But obviously, you're a very savvy investor as well. What did you see there?
Well, from a deal standpoint, you have a original historic franchise with a very deep, loyal fan base in a large MSA with a phenomenal stadium asset. Camden Yards, I think, is one of the iconic venues in all of sports. We had a favorable agreement with the state to put $600 million into renovating and expanding the stadium. which again, quite unique in sports. Most people had to fund that themselves. And while we're in a tough division, it also gave us an opportunity to have an asset that was going up against the likes of the Yankees and the Red Sox frequently in major media markets. And we thought that if we could, again, bring best practices to what had been a family-owned business for almost 35 years, that there was going to be upside on the revenue side, and that's absolutely been the case. So it started with a love of baseball. I think David would tell you it was also a love of Baltimore.
Yep.
And Baltimore gets a pretty bad rap for all the wrong reasons. It's actually a really spectacular city. It's got port assets, Hopkins, University of Maryland. You've got major corporate presence there, proximity to DC, Philly, New York. So I'm a big believer in the vibrancy and call it maybe the resurgence of Baltimore. And as an owner of a sports team in a market like that, with a little bit of investment and intentionality, you can have a huge impact.
Well, in fair disclosure, or full disclosure, one of the minority partners in the Orioles is Michael Bloomberg, who,
yes,
obviously also owns this place.
So
and a few other
things.
And a few other things. And I believe when you're talking about Johns Hopkins, you might be talking about the Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Yes, he's been a big supporter.
Big supporter. So as we start to wrap up, I would love to hear from you guys. This is an audience of people who are in the sports ecosystem. They're investing in sports. They're looking for the next thing. Tom, you have been continually, as Mike said, innovating in your career. You did a stint in motorsports, before you came to the job you're in now. You worked in baseball as well. What's on your mind in terms of what's around the corner, in terms of investments, in terms of things that people in this room can sort of sink their teeth into as they want to get deeper into the business of sports?
Yeah, it's a great question. Certainly the media landscape is changing, and how content is consumed is changing. I do think live events are more valuable and more important than ever. And I say that, there's research that shows that loneliness is killing more people today than cigarette smoking, right? There's this idea that there's a whole generation of young people today that grew up isolated. You go to a restaurant, you see them sitting across from each other on their phones, texting each other, and not talking to each other. There's more teenage depression, more anxiety than in history. And live events, what it really is about, and I tell the team this because it's more important, like what we do is not just sell tickets and drive revenue and profitability. It's we bring people together to experience life together and have shared experiences. And whether that's an international soccer game, a concert, a tennis match, a Formula One race, a football game, like people come together. If you saw these people from the University of Miami and from Notre Dame at this game the other night, it was electric. And those moments, even if they're taking selfies and posting them on social media, those moments of bringing people together.
And they're not talking politics.
And they're not talking politics. And they're also, look, AI, is going to change every business, ours included. But it's not going to change that as human beings, we still need to have connection and come together and share life together. And it's still better to be in a stadium and experience, if you're a University of Miami fan, watching this wide receiver make this one-handed catch, which was unbelievable, and score that touchdown and see, and be there and experience it with a crowd. We designed the stadium. I designed it intentionally to keep the crowd noise in. The video boards are tilted 4 degrees this way. I did an audio engineering study to make sure it keeps all the crowd noise in. Those things matter. And so as I would say to the audience, as you look at investments, the media landscape's kind of an obvious one and how that's changing and how things are consumed. But live events are still critical to humanity, to fundamentally being human. And that's kind of what we do. And so investing in that and trying to continually, again, to be customer focused. So a lot of stadiums, they do things to try to make things easier for their employees as they're operating. How do we most efficiently get this many cars in and out of here? I do things in a place where I'm constantly challenging the team. No, put yourself in the car, you're the fan. Make it easy for them. I don't care if it's hard for us. And so as things continue to evolve, I would say the operators who are doing new things to create great experiences for people, getting in and out of the stadium, the bathrooms, the food and beverage, the hospitality, how things are shared, your seating product, your whole experience, that are focused on those things, they're the ones that are going to win more in the future.
Last word to you, Mr. Arougheti. 30 seconds. Where should they?
No. It was beautiful.
This
whenever we talk about
out
our
of control.
Whenever we talk about our shared humanity, I think he's spot on, though. This all comes down to live, unscripted content and shared humanity. And what's interesting about the way that we're all consuming this is it's globalizing. So China is a massive market for the NBA. The NFL's, beginning to expand into Europe, and you have to start having a global view. I think historically, and I'll use the Orioles as an example, very local market. And if you were a star in the Orioles, maybe you could break out onto the international stage, but once in a generation. As this content is globalizing, you're now creating international stars and celebrities and role models and idols, and that's accretive to the entire ecosystem. It's good for the player, it's good for the team, it's good for the league, and it's good for the value of the content. So that's why these values are going to keep going up. It's just that the TAM just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Well, thanks for this moment of shared humanity with this audience. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.